Hey guys, today I want to talk about approaching our careers from another direction rather than trying to find a traditional job. So, the reason why I think this topic is important is because I think the job market is changing so quickly, so it's hard to know which jobs will be in demand. And also, from my experience and from the experience of people I know, we're finding the job market to be pretty quiet compared to what it would have been a few years ago. So, I think the motivation for this is to one, address the fact that it's becoming harder and harder to find jobs, but two, also to come up with approaches that make us resilient or anti-fragile to the rapid change in the marketplace. So the first idea I want to talk about is, instead of thinking that we need to find this type of job or that type of job, or we want to be a teacher or a lawyer or an engineer, whatever, it's to think a bit more broader and consider the problems that we want to solve. And I think the advantage of that is jobs might come and go, or industries might come and go, but it's not as if one day there's going to be no problems left to solve. I think with new solutions come new problems, right? So if we're the type of person who is good at identifying the right problems for us to solve, or that we're able to create solutions for, and then actually creating the solutions to those problems and being able to market and sell them, then I feel like that's a really abstract meta skill that sounds like it's pretty resilient, right? If someone's good at doing that, then since there's always going to be problems to solve, then it should be pretty set compared to someone who's used to having a certain role or used to performing a single function, because that's much more narrow. And I think if we're able to create these solutions to real problems, then there's an opportunity to be paid according to the result we produce, as opposed to a salary as well. It's more risky, but despite it being more risky, to me at least, it feels it's necessary to attempt at least. One, because it's harder to find jobs, but two, I think the degree of flexibility and freedom I want in my life is becoming less and less compatible with the traditional models day by day, year by year, especially because I really value having slack in my schedule, going for walks, spending time with friends, perhaps spending a few months every year sitting meditation courses and volunteering on them. I'm trying to change my approach to work. So yeah, that's the first thing. Become a good problem solver and also be able to sell the solutions. Then we'd be in a good position to begin with. We'd be less negatively affected by change compared to the person who is just going to the job and expecting a salary. And yeah, like I just came back from a few weeks off work, and then as soon as I came back, there's lots of changes going on in my workplace. They're trying to save a lot of money, so they're just cutting the people with the highest wages. They cut a few of the best guys who also naturally had the highest salaries because they needed to make cost savings. So that's the kind of thing. If we have our own things on the side or as our main thing, it makes these changes a lot less harmful or life-changing. If I lose that day job or it no longer becomes desirable, then currently, since that's my only source of income, it's going to hurt much more than if I had multiple. So that's the goal. That's where I want to head towards. And I think it's getting more and more important every day. Yeah, and the second thing is, sometimes I think we may have identified the problem, we might have got a really good solution, but we're not able to sell it. And then at the end of the day, no one would benefit from it, and therefore we won't get rewarded for it either. So that happened to me, where I spent, I think, 3 or 4 years in a startup where we had an excellent solution, which actually solved a real problem. However, we weren't able to convince the decision makers to adopt our services in time for the business to be sustainable. So it didn't really survive after 3 or 4 years. Long story short, we were making sensors and installing them in nursing homes and hospitals to monitor patients who were immobile, who had pressure injuries, and automatically detecting, using AI, frequency at which they were being repositioned, and enforcing and making sure they were being repositioned on time by influencing the behavior of the nurses and making sure it actually happened and it was complied with. One big problem with pressure injuries in nursing homes is people get left in their rooms and they don't get repositioned as often as they should be, and they can't do it themselves, and thus they develop pressure injuries. Anyway, long story short, that didn't work out, but it was a really great solution to a really big problem, and we saw real results, though we made the mistake of selling to the users and also the patients. We're selling the idea to them and they adopted it. However, they weren't the actual people with the money who would make the decisions to adopt the software, to adopt the services. So that was a big mistake, which I hope to learn from. One, you need to know the problem, you need a solution, you need to prove that it works, but then after that, for the idea to survive and for the business to be sustainable, we need to convince the people who ultimately make the decision to buy it to actually buy it. Yeah, the way I've been thinking about that lately is I have a few projects on the side where I'm trying to see if people want to buy it as soon as the MVP is ready. And another way is to focus a lot on marketing and reach so that there's enough exposure so that we're able to reach the people who would actually want and benefit the product. So yeah, to sum up that second tip, we need to be able to reach the people who would actually buy the product, right? Not only do we need to have the product, we need to reach the people to have the product. So that could be from marketing, from creating content, from spending money on ads. I don't have too much experience with it, but I'm trying to get better. But it's definitely something on my mind that I need to focus on, because I did invest 3 or 4 years once, and in the end it was all for nothing besides really good experience and stories to tell. Though the value we were hoping to create for the customers didn't actually eventuate because we couldn't convince the owners of nursing homes to adopt the technology. And there's a third idea I have, which is related to creating the solutions, and it's been inspired by a few books I've read recently. It's the idea of not trying to do everything yourself, but either delegating or outsourcing tasks. I think this is very powerful, especially if we have the resources to outsource particular components of the projects we're trying to do, especially if it's not absolutely crucial that we're the ones to do it. For example, I had an app I built recently and it was pretty easy for me to build the app and do it locally. I do have some experience with deploying apps and I've done it at work, etc., but it's not my super strong point, and it's not as if I find it rewarding or fun either. It would have taken me, and I know it would have taken me a couple of weeks to do, and it probably would have been a bit frustrating. But I know for someone else it would be easy because it's their full-time job or it's their specialty. And online I was able to find some freelancers overseas where the rate was really reasonable and it did everything I wanted them to do. That ended up being a win for me because I get to progress more quickly, I get to save time, and a win for the freelancers because they're getting work. So I'm trying to think more on this idea to see how I can leverage outsourcing online, just to accelerate progress in some of the ideas and projects I have, but also because it's more effective and so that I can spend my time on the things that I really need to, rather than trying to learn everything myself and do it all myself, which is a habit I have, which is actually good, but it's also bad at the same time because then things take much longer than they need to when you could have easily outsourced it. So yeah, those are my reflections for today. Find problems rather than jobs, develop solutions to those problems, make sure they're real problems and there's real demand for it, somehow be able to sell those solutions and reach the people who would actually pay for it and convince them. And in the process of creating a solution, remember to consider delegating or outsourcing. Anyway, so that's pretty much, I hope that was useful. It's the kind of stuff I've been thinking about recently. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.